church throughout the world will be celebrating the martyr, St. Maximilian Kolbe. St. Maximilian Kolbe was a Catholic priest born in the late 1890s. At an early age, he recognized he had a strong devotion to Mary, the mother of Jesus, and he had a tug in his heart calling him to the priesthood. He was educated in Rome, where he received a doctorate both in philosophy and theology. When he returned back home to Europe, the Nazis were beginning to rise. One of the things that Maximilian Kolbe did bravely was he talked about the evil of the Nazi regime, the hatred towards Jews, and he spoke out and he also published defiantly to the Nazi regime. At one point, the Nazis, realizing that Maximilian Kolbe was part German, offered him documentation that would make him a German citizen. Maximilian Kolbe refused that documentation. One of the things that Maximilian Kolbe did when the Nazi regime began to intensify was he began to hide Jews in his monasteries and seminaries. At a certain point in time, Maximilian Kolbe was arrested for this and ended up in Auschwitz, the concentration camp. While he was in the concentration camp, he was very much abused by those in power. On this one particular day, a number of prisoners had escaped from the concentration camp. The commandant of the facility ordered that 10 men be placed in an underground bunker, and they were going to starve these men to death. When the 10 men were chosen, one of them cried out and said, "I have a wife and children. Could you spare me my life?" When Maximilian Kolbe saw this, he raised his hand and said to the commandant, "I would like to take his place. I have no wife, I have no children." Surprisingly, the commandant granted the request. Maximilian Kolbe in the bunker taught the other 9 victims how to pray, how to worship Mary and worship God, and also taught them hymns to sing as they were experiencing starvation. At the end of a certain amount of days, 9 of the prisoners died. Maximilian Kolbe was still alive. One of the doctors came in with a syringe that would take his life. When that was done, Maximilian Kolbe handed up his arm in order to have the syringe inserted. Listening to the story of Maximilian Kolbe, what would he do if he was in the United States today? What would he be saying? What would he be writing? Would he be standing up to white supremacists? Would he be standing up to hate? Would he be standing up to violence? Would he be standing up to oppression? And I believe the answer is obvious. Yes, he would. In the gospel today, we hear the story of the disciples on the lake, and they are shaken. The winds are buffeting, the boat is being tossed about, and they don't know if they are going to live or die. They see a ghost coming to them, walking on the waters. Jesus says to them, "Take courage, it is I." I believe Maximilian Kolbe had those words of Jesus engraved in his own heart when he spoke out and when he published against the Nazi regime. He had those words, "Take courage, I am with you." And I believe Maximilian Kolbe today would challenge us to have those words engraved in our own hearts, in our own minds. We are to speak out against racism. We are under no circumstances to partially support any type of hatred that exists in our world. Jesus Christ has shown us another way. Jesus calls us to live in harmony. Jesus calls us to respect the dignity of every human being, regardless of color, creed. So as we gather here today in prayer, after witnessing what took place in Charlottesville, Virginia yesterday, the driving of the car into those that were protesting against the white supremacists, and one person being killed, others injured. I remember when I was in the seminary, I read an article, and I don't know who wrote the article, but I remember just parts of it. And it was about the Nazi regime. When the Nazis came to take the Jews, no one spoke. When the Nazis came to take the Catholics, nobody spoke. When the Nazis came to take the Lutherans, nobody spoke. And by the time that they got to the last person, there was nobody left to speak against the regime. We have to listen to the words of Jesus. And if we are at work and we hear this brought up at work when we are with our coworkers, and maybe negative, snide remarks are made, we can't tolerate that. Evil seeps into our hearts and our minds, and it corrupts us. I hear the voices of the little ones in church today. Are we going to allow such insipid evil to penetrate their hearts, their minds? I encourage those of you that are parents, those of you that are grandparents, to take this opportunity today as a teachable moment. On the TV news yesterday, they were saying some of these graphics may be too brutal for little children. Well, I think it's appropriate for parents to instruct their children against hate, against racism, against violence. Grandparents, if you're around your little grandchildren and they see what's going on and they look to you, speak to them the message of Jesus. In a number of moments, we will be gathering around the altar. And we all know that at the altar of Christ's sacrifice, he was nailed to the cross. James Martin, a Jesuit and a spiritual writer, in a number of tweets yesterday said that when anyone hails Hitler, you might as well be hammering another nail into the hand of Christ. When somebody gives the Hail Hitler salute, that's as if somebody is driving a lance into Christ's side. So we need to see this evil clearly for what it is. And we must be defiant. We must take courage that we in no way participate in such a hateful thing.